Mini episode 105 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by the Pullins Group, delivering public affairs consulting and marketing services for small businesses trying to grow. Follow them on the web at pullinsgroup.com.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
All right, Kyle, we have reached the finish line here, or at least at the end of this one, Part 9 of the Kyle Ross History of WrestleMania anthology here in the FDH Lounge.
Oh, my bad. Would you like to get your name out there?
Rick Morris caddying for Kyle Ross here.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say that knowing the way that we've been going with all these, the finish line is still a while away.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it.
Yes.
We don't exactly know at the moment here. We go where the spirit takes us.
No one gives you more.
Yeah.
In these, okay? I will put this series, okay, it's the Flair Steamboat of wrestling podcasts, I believe. I will put these against any wrestling podcasts anywhere. Thank you very much.
I mean, this is going to be well over 10 hours. I don't know exactly how many by the time we're done, but it's at least that much.
Yeah.
So yeah, nobody delivers for the peeps like we do. We talked about in the last
the
one
FDH Lounge where the big boys play.
Yeah, yes. we talked
this
about
is not the World Whining Federation.
It is not, nor the World Entrance Federation, yes. As used to be the case back on SNS back in the day, as that used to be joked about. But we talked about in the last one here, and this is what sets up for the modern era. We're covering the modern era here, WrestleMania 22 to the present. And again, we're going to go over these a lot quicker than we did the previous ones because, hey, I would hope most of you out there actually know what happened in the modern era.
Yeah, and you, as the time goes by, you might still learn something about some of these shows,
right.
Especially the more, the book isn't closed on some of these.
Yes.
And I mean, even if you watch something like the documentary, people are like, wow, I can't believe you're, painting the last, 6 with one broad stroke. Well, like, look at the WrestleMania DVD.
Right.
I mean, once you get to the end, it's kind of like, you just watch, it's fresh in your mind.
Right. And in this modern era, and we talked about it toward the end of the previous one, we were talking about WrestleMania 21, which was the launch in some ways for this year. And something we've talked about a lot is the class of 02. Essentially, the guys that came up from Ohio Valley Wrestling. Brock Lesnar was shot to the main event, was already gone by this point in time. But you got Randy Orton, who had a match against The Undertaker, his first big high-profile singles match in there. And then you had some other guys that came out of Ohio Valley Wrestling in 2002. You had a guy, Kyle Ross, who was known as Leviathan. But you know him as Batista. I'll explain in a second why we're laughing. And you had another guy known as the Prototype. You know him as John Cena.
You don't say.
Yeah, what we're doing, by the way, and I can only hope that this guy stumbles across this mini episode, some tool shed at an ROH show.
I don't know what it's from. If somebody is listening to this and was with me.
This is a guy who knows Belfie. I'll have to ask Belfie this, because this is a guy who he knows, and you won't be surprised, speaks disparagingly of. I know this covers a lot of people that Belfie's dealt with, but yeah, Belfie speaks, go figure, Belfie speaks disparagingly of this fellow. I'll have to ask him for his name, but this is a guy who at one point in time had some early connections to the Pro Wrestling Insider show that Belfie does.
And I don't know if it was a Ring of Honor show or what, but I just remember running into this knob, and he knew what we did.
And he was like lording over his OVW trivia on you.
And he thought he was so smart.
It's not even trivia, actually. Any smart fan knows that. He thought he was so smart
because he knew Cena and Batista's name in OVW, and he said it like he was so cool. He's like, I remember in OVW watching a guy by the name of Leviathan. You know him as Batista. And he's like, there was another guy, too, that I really liked. His name was Prototype. You know him as John Cena. I was like, who is this knob? I'm glad you reminded me about that. I have no idea who this man was. I can't remember if it was a Ring of Honor show with. I can't remember who I was with.
I think it was ROH. I'll have to ask Belfie.
I just remember.
I'm thinking that the guy's name is Kevin for some reason.
Okay, all I know is I hope there was an old episode of SNS where we trolled the hell out of this guy. I just don't know.
Well, we're trolling him now, even if you didn't then.
You know him as Batista.
What better setup could there be for talking about the modern era as we start to get into these guys? And again, we're gonna hit these all, in much more rapid succession.
Just hitting the top matches,
Well,
really.
exactly, and we don't even have to do a macro because I feel like we can just refer you back to the end of Chapter 8 of this thing here. When we talk about WrestleMania 21, that really kicked off the modern era. You lumped it in with 19 and 20 because you felt like it was the best 3-year run, and that was the theme of that particular mini episode that we did. But here in Part 9, it's taking it the rest of the way up to the present, and like you said, there are so many commonalities. There's not much different. They're working off the same template every year, for better and for worse. That's why there's only a couple things every year worth talking about presently in the historical record.
Yeah, and with WrestleMania 22, I think there's two things worth pointing out. One, it's the last non-stadium WrestleMania.
Which one?
22. All the other ones have been big stadiums.
You're right. You're right.
Ford Field, Orange Bowl, Houston. Where was 26 at? Arizona.
Yeah,
you're right.
Last
Last year was, I can't even remember where last year was. How embarrassing is that?
You know what was weird?
Where was last year's WrestleMania?
Last year was in Atlanta.
Okay,
that's how
right.
forgettable it was.
Okay,
but it was a thing where what they did, and they've done this a couple times in WrestleMania history, because you're talking about what came before the run of the dome shows, doing the loop, if you will, New York, Chicago, L.A. In this case, it was New York, L.A., Chicago. Chicago was 22. They've always liked these markets here. Quite frankly...
Well, I don't know if you know your United States, and I know you do, being the politician that you are, but those are the 3 largest cities in the country.
Oh, exactly.
Did you know that?
Exactly. Rumor has it anyways.
The Windy City.
Yes.
You know it as Chicago.
I look forward to all the ways we can incorporate that as we go along.
I'm going to beat this joke into the ground about 10 minutes in.
Here's what I'm wondering about, because, again, a long time ago, they talked about doing, and if they do it now, it wouldn't be the L.A. Memorial Coliseum because it's a rat hole. But this may mean maybe we have a Rose Bowl to look forward to in the future. What I'm wondering
Cowboys Stadium is the one big one out there.
Yeah, but what I'm wondering is they're doing it at New Meadowlands next year. Could that mean, would they have the Bizzalls to do a Soldier Field show, do one right up on the lake in early April?
No.
You don't think so?
It'd be real cold. It could snow.
It could. It very well could, yeah.
No, I don't think they... No.
Okay. All right, just wondering.
Chicago's a great wrestling town. It's a town that has continuously, through this entire year, shown that it hates John Cena.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to start with WrestleMania 22.
Yeah.
This is a very average WrestleMania. I think this was a clear step down from the previous 3.
Yes.
It was one that was obviously covered in great detail in the SNS days. And what's interesting is I think it's become more historically irrelevant in that what I always remembered with this show, in the years after, was Cena getting the hell boot out of him against Triple H, long-time heel Triple H. And at the time, I remember everyone was in panic mode. I remember myself. I probably went on the air and said, "Oh my God, you've got to turn this guy heel tomorrow." I mean, this is terrible. You just said the number one babyface of the company. You put over boot out of the frickin' building. But considering that happens every time he goes to Chicago, considering that it happens, relatively, regularly.
Right.
To me, it was pretty vicious at this time, and it was new. There were signs. We talked about at the end of our last podcast the switch of Cena and Batista, them switching brands, and how it really didn't work out the way as well as I think it was intended. Batista gets injured right away too. He's not even on this card. That's another thing that Batista.
We'll talk about that with the world title
Some people
fight.
may know him better as Leviathan.
Yes.
But for WrestleMania 22, we just know him as injured, which is certainly something a lot of people.
We
know
knew him as that a few times in the
Yes.
years to come.
But this is just a forgettable WrestleMania. I mean, when you look at it, Cena going over Triple H certainly did not have. It just did. There was no real program to
Isn't it almost? This is almost devoid of historical importance.
Yeah, I think there were some rumors that they wanted to do Hogan Austin at this one. Remember,
there
didn't
were.
Hogan?
There were.
And that fell through. And this was a show that really could have used a blast from the past match.
Although there was talk that even at the Hall of Fame inductions that weekend, that it could be like the start of a setup for the next year in the Dome in Detroit. So it could have been this year, it could have been the next year.
But yeah, this was just a kind of a forget. I mean, it's not, nothing really stinks on this one.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot to say about John Cena, Triple H, to be honest with you. The program was very forgettable. Triple H lost the Rumble. but still challenged anyway. They did that again, and I remember being surprised that Cena won.
Well,
at the time.
Yeah, because they seem to be pointing the other way, but it was a thing where I got 2 points to make about that. The first is, I'm going to go back to what you've said previously in other contexts here, in previous segments that we've done, people cheering the booking. Isn't it, quite frankly, a matter of that with Triple H, that he had been booked as a dominant heel for so long? It was just a matter. He was getting booked so much stronger than Cena. Cena's doing everything but going out there and calling him Mr. Helmsley. I mean, they were cheering the booking.
I don't know if they were cheering the booking or booing the booking.
Well,
I think it was
like why they were getting behind Triple H, because
I don't
his
know if
booking was so much stronger. They were behind him.
I think if I would have worked against Cena that night, I would have got some cheers.
I think you're right.
You know, I think it was more of an anti.
Right.
It's usually more, and to Cena's credit, you know, by God, you love him or you hate him, everyone's got an opinion. That it's usually in a lot of Cena matches, and there are some guys where people are genuinely cheering for the opponent, but a lot of times it's people just booing Cena.
Yeah, that's true.
And there was definitely some cheers to Triple H, but I think it was more along the lines of the crowd just saying a significant portion of the crowd, a crowd that would listen to a podcast like this, the so-called smart marks, just pooping on Cena, not wanting him.
Well, the other thing here, too, and I feel like what we're doing with this first one here is setting up the themes that we probably don't have to touch as much on in the ones going forward here, but one of them is, again, in terms of John Cena and the reaction to him over the years by the crowd, and the fact that we were still at the point in time, eventually as you went along, you knew, okay, the office isn't changing their approach no matter what. But it was still at this point in time it was still possible not to be thought of as naive for thinking that they were going to give in and just turn him heel.
Oh, yeah.
And essentially the crowd did. I mean, I'll never forget the post-show for SNS, which I stuck around for that night, and making the joke with you guys.
Someone remembers it. I think I was kind of hammered by that point.
You may remember me saying this, you may not. But I made the joke early on and said, those cameras afterwards, and this was not so much a joke as an observation, it was just it was unbelievable they tried to do this. They managed to find the isolated people, no more than 100 in a crowd of 13,000 plus, that were happy about this.
Yeah.
With a Hulk Hogan victory at WrestleMania, love him or hate him, and you know where we fall on that spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
you could have panned anywhere in the crowd and seen people happy while he was in there doing his routine, versus that night, it was the master of all selective editing. Let's get close zoom-ups on people who are celebrating, because they are the exception to the rule.
Look, let me kind of do a little foreshadowing here.
Yeah.
It's interesting that everything we're talking about is coming to a head this year at WrestleMania. By the way, we will be going over this year's WrestleMania card at the end of this podcast, kids. Yep. All right, listen to it. That the stubbornness of this promotion, it's an unprecedented stubbornness with a performer.
Right.
There is no other promotion with no other wrestler that has ever been this stubborn not to turn a guy. I mean, if you look through the history of this business, any baby face who's getting consistently booed or any heel that's being consistently cheered is turned typically, unless if it's like an isolated event in a random crowd. I mean, I know, you have things. I mean, I'm going way back here, Rick. You'll like this reference. You have the Freebirds Dynamic Dudes at Halloween Havoc '89, right. But that was face-hating Philly in its heyday. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
For there to be such a long and consistent and sustained period of a top, not just a babyface, but your top babyface being booed, and we're still talking. And again, this is why we're lumping all these together.
Right.
This is WrestleMania 22. We're coming on WrestleMania 28. Still talking about the same things.
Sure. And the way that it goes, too, with John Cena, to me, and you and I are, I mean, the entire point of doing something like we've been doing in these 9 parts here is that, you and I are people that enjoy looking at history and kind of placing it in certain contexts. That is one of the first bullets that goes on his professional epitaph when he's done. When you think of John Cena, the 2 or 3 things you think of, one of them has to be that it's almost unprecedented in the course of the industry that I can think of nobody else that was immune to what the crowd wanted them to be. For John Cena, it was all about what the office wanted him to be, because he sells merch, and he sells merch to kiddies, period.
And he's very popular, and I'm not saying that he should be curtain jerking or anything, but I mean, it's unique as they might say.
It was. Now, this was the title match that closed the show. Like I said, we're not going to hit all the things here that happened, but the other world title match for the World Heavyweight
This
Championship.
should be touched upon.
Triple threat in only 9:18.
Again, one of the title matches inferior to the other.
Yeah, and boy, I'd love to line these up and take a look at them. Was there ever a non-Hulk Hogan world title match at WrestleMania shorter than this one? Rey Mysterio defeated Randy Orton and Kurt Angle to win the championship. They had done the very distasteful Randy Orton, Eddie's in Hell thing, setting this up. This was basically the Eddie Guerrero death exploitation angle here.
All right, you and I have talked about this before. I think that's strong. I remember I defended
I stand by it.
Some of the things they did, the Orton comments, which, by the way, I'm sure he didn't come up with. Okay, right. I think that was a little, maybe you want to say this, Randy.
I know. I don't blame him personally.
Okay, but no. Here's the thing. Maybe again, it's my expectations for this industry. The concept that in the wake of Eddie Guerrero's death, it would call it exploited, call it what you will. Rey Mysterio winning the title, I have nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Look at the
Doesn't
NFL.
Rey Mysterio have a great enough story independent of Eddie Guerrero to merit this?
I think it gives him a little nudge he needed. I do not. It's funny. I always talk about another pointless part of another thing that I don't like about the two champions is basically everyone who's held the title would have gotten a run had there only been one title anyway. It would have just been more meaningful.
Right.
If I was to pick a couple guys that wouldn't have, JBL would have certainly be on that list. I think Rey Mysterio is also on that list.
Yeah.
He only got this run because of it. And you could say that, hey, well, he is real talented, and if he wasn't booked properly anyway, but he wasn't booked but the Eddie stuff wasn't what did him harm or made me look at him negatively. It was that he was just booked like a loser, to be honest, in this whole period.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing where people hold wrestling to a standard that's too high. Look at the NFL. Somebody passes away. I remember a couple years ago there was a coach for the Bengals.
Mike Zimmer, the defensive coordinator's wife, passed away.
All over. Oh, what a great win that was for the Bengals. They did it for Mike Zimmer.
Al Davis this past year.
Al
the Raiders
Davis.
win one for Al.
Brett Favre's dad passes away. He still plays. John Mann's fawning over him. People do this. It's very natural. Now, I didn't like some of the. I think it was people not being intellectually honest with themselves, saying, "Oh, I don't want Ray to win this way." It's like, well, to me, it's like, man, he ain't going to win it any other way. Well, he wasn't.
The other thing I'll say too, wrestling has a very warped sense of the participants that are in. I will not rule out that if somebody were to tell Eddie Guerrero, you're going to pass away on this date or whatever, and oh, by the way, at the next WrestleMania, we're going to do this, and you're going to be a big part of the storyline, Eddie would have been like, that's great. If I can't be there, I find that warped. But I will not rule out that Eddie would have been like, you know what, if I can't be there, then I'll still feel like I'm a part of it. I'll be watching from another place. Let me be a part. In other words, that Eddie himself would have blessed it. I cannot rule that out. I find it warped that anybody would bless that, but I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt in this industry. Participants have a sense of that Eddie might have regarded it as a sense of immortality. I'm not physically there, but I'm a part of the storyline.
I don't think this cheapened. I kind of agree
you seem
with where
confused.
you're going there.
You seem confused by my point.
At first, I didn't know where you were going.
Okay.
But I don't think this cheapened the memory.
Do you think Eddie would have approved? I mean, I don't know one way or another.
I don't know.
Okay.
Here's what I'm saying, though.
Okay.
I think it would be more distasteful for them to just completely just drive over it like it's a speed bump, never mention it again.
I would agree with that.
I always said that, and there were people who got really offended by them talking about it, and I think those people are dumb.
I would agree with that. As this is a good bridge to the next one we're going to talk about. We'll talk about this one briefly, but as much as I don't like the PG era, at least we're not hearing Eddie is dead, and at least there are no Vince McMahon matches that involve God as a tag team partner. That would come the month after this when Shawn Michaels defeated Vince McMahon. This was the beginning of the seeds of DX reuniting. Both Shawn Michaels in his match and Triple H gave crotch chops in their matches there. And it was just your typical.
This was your usual McMahon throwaway, but at least it was not a main drawing card.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
It wasn't.
This was fine.
It was, yeah. Undertaker, his most forgettable match of the last dozen years at WrestleMania against Mark Henry in a casket match before Mark Henry was awesome in the last year. Nothing else really worth much talking about aside from
Edge and Foley.
That's what I was going to say.
That's the best match on this card. I think it's a fringe top 25 WrestleMania match, and obviously memorable for the big spot at the end with the spear through the flaming table.
And if we're gonna grasp, and God knows you got to grasp on this card for anything of historical significance, this as the continuing of Edge's elevation up the card. It was consensus by this point in time he deserved to hold on to the title longer than he did when he won it from Cena with the Money in the Bank earlier in the year. The ratings popped, business popped when he had it. This match here as a consolation prize for him and the effectiveness of him in the hardcore format against Mick Foley, that looks to me like the only historical significance on the whole friggin' card.
Yeah, I remember me and your old friend Jake Digman kind of lamenting at the time, it would be great to do streak versus streak at this point, yes. Edge versus Undertaker, because Edge deserves something, you know, rather than just kind of be a speed bump champion. But you know what? This actually probably was better for Edge to do because he would have jobbed to the Undertaker, and it would have just made it worse. So.
Well, and he wasn't ready for the Undertaker yet. He needed to still be built more. The only other thing I'll mention, just because I didn't get a chance to mention it previously when I saw him on WrestleMania lineups or Billiard Chuck or whatever, but Goldust was in the Battle Royal that they had the dark match to start this show, and just apropos of nothing, I just like to say, just as proof that I would have been one of the most politically incorrect bookers of all time, I always thought that Goldust's finishing maneuver should have been the fruit roll-up. Wouldn't that have been a great one?
Oh, boy.
Wouldn't that have been great?
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
You don't seem appreciative of that, Kyle Ross.
That's just, yeah, break. How about the mouth-to-mouth angle with Ahmed Johnson? I always enjoyed that.
That was outstanding. I loved it. The next year, WrestleMania 23, again, we talked about this, that there are certain template kind of things here. There's going to be a John Cena title match. This year there would be a Batista title match. He was back in the picture. The Undertaker would be in a high-profile match. That would be against Batista. There would be a big event with a celebrity and or possibly a Vince McMahon match. We haven't seen a Vince McMahon match at WrestleMania since the Shawn Michaels one, but he factored into the celebrity angle this time. I think that's most of the main themes here.
Yeah, well, and there's one more. 20 years later, they returned to Detroit.
Yes, they
after
did.
the big WrestleMania 3. This show clearly not as good.
No, not at all.
It was interesting because, again, they did this where they had some great build. You know, I'll give them this. This was one of the occasions where they legitimately had the two title matches I thought pretty even.
Yeah.
Now, Cena was obviously the star of the promotion, but The Undertaker was the hot challenger. He had won the Rumble for the first time ever. A very good Rumble, by the way.
Yeah.
Again, beating Shawn Michaels. But Michaels was kind of thrust into the world title picture when Triple H got hurt at the beginning of the year. And he drew Cena. I didn't really ever buy Michaels as having a chance to win. The match is good. It's right on the outskirts of the top 25 WrestleMania matches of all time. Both title matches here are. I think both you got 2 4-star title matches here. But it's funny that there's always, of course, a story that Batista and Undertaker were real pissed that they didn't get to go on last year. I think they probably should have because The Undertaker had won the Rumble. He was the hotter challenger. And it was the match that I thought had more intrigue. Cena-Michaels, I remember, just didn't do it for me. Right. It was more that they put that on last to reaffirm that Cena was their guy. Again, stubbornness with Cena.
Yeah, politics.
So Undertaker does go over Batista to continue the streak.
I thought Batista would go over. I thought he would win, and I thought he should win. Now this is hindsight's 2020. I guess I was wrong about that because Batista's not around anymore. But
yeah, and kind of after this, the bloom was kind of off the proverbial Batista rose. Remember, he got hurt. He wasn't on WrestleMania. He comes back, beats Booker T.
Yeah,
and then I kind of always got the sense that it was time to move for Batista.
He was never the same on SmackDown.
And it was fine because at least by next year, Edge, who was the guy who needed to be the champ on SmackDown, got it anyway with doing the Money in the Bank gimmick again, beating Undertaker. But the match that drew the house on this involved Vince McMahon and Donald Trump.
It did. Now, let me just go back to the Cena match for just a second and say, and it was an excellent match. I said to you off air, I don't know the extent to which you agree or disagree. You had the existing program with Michaels, with Team Rated RKO, I would have made this a 4-way match because I don't think you had enough intrigue. I agree with you on Cena versus Michaels. They were the tag team champions at that point. Oh, yeah. Unlikely partners, blah, blah, blah.
I liked Team RKO, rated RKO.
Well, exactly. But, I mean, I'm saying Cena and Michaels were the tag team champions by the time WrestleMania rolled around. But
were they?
Yeah, they were. They won them off of Team RKO. That was how badly they buried Team RKO, who both ended up in the Money in the Bank ladder match. Do you agree with me? It would have been much more intrigue, the 4 of them in there, than just Cena and Michaels?
Yeah.
Playing off of the history?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
And what's funny is that they did do that for the next pay-per-view Backlash, and it was a better match.
Yeah.
And by the way, Batista and Undertaker also had a better match at that same pay-per-view.
Yeah. So
that was a good pay-per-view.
Sometimes
Backlash 07 was strong, I remember.
Yeah, it was. It really was. And that was...
And then Cena and Michaels even had a better match, the match in London, the 50-minute match on TV that Michaels wins non-title.
Backlash 07, we should mention this because we teased it before. Bad Blood 03 started the run of individual brand pay-per-views. Backlash 07 started the present run of where every pay-per-view is all brands at that point in time, where ECW wasn't always on all of them, ECW having restarted in 06 under their banner, WWECW, if you will.
We're not going to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, the guy who was the ECW champion at the time, Bobby Lashley.
Very nice segue there, Ricky.
Thank you. This is a thing where you're right that it drew a lot of money. Steve Austin was the special guest referee. Bobby Lashley, with Donald Trump in his corner, defeated Umaga with Vince McMahon and Armando Alejandro Estrada in his corner. Hair versus hair.
Who,
for
by
Trump
this
and
point, was
McMahon.
not allowed to cut promos anymore because he was cut. It's funny, we're going to do it again, just whatever.
But,
John Cena, we don't want to, it was so funny. Oh, my God, he's getting a positive reaction. We need to kill him.
Right.
And not let him talk.
And this strikes me as a thing where I can't remember too many times where they really drew off of a match in spite of themselves, because as armchair booker, there was nothing I liked about the setup of this thing. It started from a goofy Donald Trump, Rosie O'Donnell skit on Raw, and then by the time it emerged to being a challenge between, Vince and Trump both got egos. I get that. Things are going to escalate between them. Vince goes for Umaga, who Cena had cleanly beaten on pay-per-view twice earlier in the year. I guess I could kind of get that as maybe the best available guy. You could have made a strong...
And they had a good match at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah,
Cena and Umaga. It was very good. There are people who love that match. I'm not going to go that far, but it was a good match.
Right, but I mean, I'm looking here at who else was available. I mean, King Booker, Orton, Edge, whatever.
Look, a lot of those guys, though, were kind of like, they've been there before. They wanted to go with two, and yes, you're right. Umaga had just lost to Cena, but he's still near the top of the card.
And we never heard why Donald Trump picked Lashley. Would it be asking too much to get one friggin' promo about, I've been scouting these guys, and this guy looks like the future of wrestling to me? Come on, Kyle. Come on.
You can't count on Donald Trump to do that.
To give a promo? He gives promos every week on his own show.
Yeah, but he knows what he's talking about there. Here's
knows
the problem.
Enough about pro wrestling.
No, he doesn't. Here's the problem.
He hosted 2 of them.
Well,
2 WrestleManias.
Okay, yeah, so did, a lot. I'm trying to think. I can't think of. You caught me tongue-tied here. I don't know. I'm trying to think of someone else who hosted. I guess he's the only guy who, kind of his name's on the marquee of the building. Well, then again, I don't think the Ford family, okay?
Right, that's true.
With the Detroit Lions. But listen to this. This, to me, is your classic short-sighted, let's draw some money, let's draw some attention move.
Right. And I know they thought Lashley was going to be one of the next big things in the company.
And that wasn't their fault.
Right. No.
And Umaga should have lost to John Cena. Okay, now, you could question the timing if you're going to put him in a match like this.
I do question the timing.
But he did not deserve to go over John Cena.
Right.
Okay. And obviously, for reasons out of their control, he's definitely no longer. I mean, he's passed away, obviously.
Right.
Lashley just simply decided to call it quit, very Brock Lesnar-esque.
Right.
Decided he didn't want to do this anymore, so that's not their fault. But it's like, okay, yeah, this has become Donald Trump, the Donald Trump match, rather than the participants mattering.
Right.
Which is ultimately what this should be about. This should be about Trump and McMahon's involvement, giving a rub to the performers.
Right.
It really didn't do that. So, yeah, while this drew a big number, it's like one of those things that people are like, oh, okay, we saw Donald Trump. Vince got his head shaved. See you next year at WrestleMania.
I'm going to give you a real funny postscript to this, especially with you being a guy who works in the professional gaming advisory industry. I came across something before the show. I think this was on one of the wrestling message boards, and they were quoting from some offshores. Offshores were actually taking action on who was going to get their head shaved. And as you would guess, it was immensely stacked as far as the big favorite being that Vince was going to get his head shaved. I always had visions of this, of Trump walking into Vince's office the day of the show and saying, Vince, change of plans here. I just bet $5 million on me at 500 to 1
I'm
getting my head
there's
shaved.
handles on those kind of props where the books protect themselves. But I that's what I always said why I said you can't bet on wrestling because Vince could just have somebody walk in. So that's the
one time. By the way,
there is betting on Rock and Cena, I believe, this year.
I believe that there is. The other thing I'm going to mention here too. You mentioned about 20 years after WrestleMania 3. The sort of half-hearted way that they tried to capitalize on that was a match. Great Khali defeated Kane in 5:32. They tried to play off of Khali being like the modern giant. That was part of the storyline of that match.
I don't want to do this to you again, but that's shitty.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay.
I understand. While I did not use the word, I do not differ with it. So
yes,
those were like the high points of that card. Again,
I'd like to say
here.
That was a better that WrestleMania, although maybe that didn't do it justice, was better than 22.
Better than 22, yeah.
And it's a good WrestleMania.
24, overall. Which to me might very well be the best of the modern era here. So many memorable moments. Let's just go right to the one that it's the best known for. In 2023, Shawn Michaels defeated Ric Flair, retiring him, at least if you don't watch Impact, which, again, most wrestling fans don't. But it was a retirement match for Ric Flair.
Why don't you wrestle anymore, Ric Flair? Why aren't you in WWE?
I love that he gets asked that all the time. That is like the great... And moreover, that Ric Flair, who, as best as I can tell, is otherwise a loyal Impact Wrestling employee, will say that at the drop of a hat in an interview. What do you think Money Mark Dixie Carter is thinking every time that comes out of his pie hole?
TNA is an abortion.
It is. It's a horrible promotion. Ironically, he would go back on his word in the same town where he lost his career to the Shawn Michaels in this match, because this was held at the Citrus Bowl in Orlando.
Another dump in Florida.
But the temporary renovation for it, I don't know if I think that was on the WrestleMania DVD. An amazing, amazing job for one day of not making it look like a crap hole.
Yeah,
props to them.
I'm going to say something that's going to surprise you.
Yeah.
I don't think this was one of the 25 best matches at WrestleMania. This doesn't mean.
Really?
I've seen some people shower this with a lot of love. Here's what the problem was with Michael's involvement in there.
Yeah.
They kind of raised the bar where it was, like you talked on the last one, where it was one of those matches where it was about the performance.
Yeah.
And Flair just couldn't go anymore at this point, man.
And how about Michaels almost cracking his sternum? He did that dive out of the ring. Didn't he go to a moonsault or something?
Yeah.
Almost cracked it on the guardrail?
He was trying real hard, and the end was very emotional. I'm sorry, I love you, and he super kicks him.
To me, it was like...
It was just very inevitable.
It was like the Hogan-Andre atmosphere, but with work rate. That's how I looked at it.
Really?
You didn't think the crowd was that hot?
I thought they were. But I remember for what well, first of all, here's a couple things. They had the gimmick where if he lost, that seemed like a little excessive here because he'd been inducted in the Hall of Fame. You knew he was going to lose.
Right.
I think it would have almost been better if they would have just said it's his last match. And I just want to go out and...
But there was the thing that would have taken away the storyline of him desperately trying to avoid it, trying to stop Father Time.
And I just knew he was...
Look, we all knew it.
These are my two favorite guys, but I think this is like a 3.5-star match.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. All right.
It is not the 5 stars that Wade Keller gave it. It's a preposterous rating.
He gave it 5?
I thought he did.
Wow.
That's way too low.
I thought there would have had to been a reach around for him to give it 5
There
stars.
you go. Yeah, but no, this does not be in my top 25 WrestleMania matches.
This was
not even the best match on the show.
This was not an important match on the card, but I'm going to mention it anyways because it involves one of the key guys of the era. This was a stupid battle for brand supremacy match that meant nothing at 7:06. Batista, representing SmackDown, defeated Umaga, representing Raw. Umaga, if the previous year, well down the card.
This was one of those things. This is one of those classic cases of we got two big names that aren't doing anything. Let's just put them against each other.
Yeah, Umaga wasn't even at that point. At this point, what it was he was big enough to plausibly have a match with Batista, and that's all that mattered.
True.
The other ones here of any note whatsoever. Before we get to the title matches, I'll mention the big special attraction match of the card here. They've done a fair number of freak shows in recent years, and few bigger than this one. At 11:36 in a no disqualification match, Floyd Money Mayweather defeated the Big Show by knockout. He had the loaded gloves or brass knucks, whatever. Sort of a boxing versus wrestling angle on this thing here, although Floyd Mayweather wasn't limited to that. The one great part about this that I will put over until the day I die, the thing of how they do a thing where in the middle of the match, or in wrestling when they have the rounds and you're in their corner and they'll squirt water in your mouth. Floyd Mayweather had like this big-ass chalice that he was like drinking out of. Like, okay, he's got the pimp chalice. I'm going to put that over.
Floyd Mayweather was very good and very natural at wrestling. Say what you about Floyd Mayweather. He understands. I mean, he's a heel in boxing. I mean, they just don't say that.
And they tried to start him as a face, and in Las Vegas, where he's never been a face.
Well,
I mean,
I had a major issue with the Big Show being involved in this because it's just another, and we've been talking about this seemingly for years, of here's the guy who's supposed to be your Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
Okay, they just brought him back, and you have him lose to a tiny boxer. Right. I know that Floyd Mayweather's but it doesn't make him number one. Look, Mayweather's not going to do this and lose, but
it should have taken a tank running over the Big Show to put him down.
I just didn't like his involvement in it. I just thought it made him look bad. Like, to me, if the Office today is sitting there banging its head against the desk, saying, why don't people get more emotionally invested in the Big Show? They should probably look to this, because they haven't helped them.
I would agree. The one thing I want to play counterpoint on, because that's an interesting point, what I think they would say to you is that Andre had the luxury of being a special attraction in an era where that was possible, and that the Big Show today,
it's tougher.
I mean, they got to book him more so like other guys. The two title matches here. This one, the first one here, the triple threat for the WWE Championship. This was buried in the middle of the card. John Cena coming back from an injury shockingly early at the Royal Rumble. He recovered from a torn pec or whatever.
Yeah, and he was the big surprise.
Number 30, the only number 30 ever to win the Royal Rumble.
No, is that true? I thought
unless somebody has since. He was the first one. Yeah, I don't think anybody has since.
The Undertaker wasn't 30 when he won it?
No, he was not. I remember that at the time. He was the first one to ever win at number 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I think that Royal Rumble's overrated. I'm going to tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
The sheets were so it was because no one knew about it.
Nobody knew.
And because they got over on the sheets were like, this was so shocking. I was here. We were playing a drinking game. Me and the little guy. The little guy was over, as a matter of fact. Me and all of us played a great drinking game during that Rumble. You ever played this? I recommend doing this for the Rumble. It's fun.
Okay.
How many ever people are over at your party? Everyone draws a number. Okay? So say it's you and 5 buddies watching it. Okay? You'll draw numbers 1 to 6. Whatever number you draw, that's the first guy. That guy is your guy in the Rumble. When he's eliminated, you do a drink, do a shot, whatever. The next guy, so your guy's out, you then inherit the next guy in the ring. I remember this was we've done it multiple times. This was a nightmare Rumble to do this with, because there were so many guys in the ring. It was so backlogged that I just remember that being a nightmare for my drinking game and thinking that Rumble was overrated. I couldn't believe the praise that was heaped upon it. I thought it was really boring until the end.
Yeah, and they crammed it into a storyline where because Cena chose to not wait for his vengeance.
I hated that.
He wrestled Randy Orton the next month at No Way Out.
Yeah, I hated
Randy Orton punched the ref or whatever, kept it by disqualification. So Cena and Triple H, and it was an odd kind of a thing.
I didn't like that.
Orton wins by, I think it was, what was it, that didn't Triple H pedigree Cena, but Orton came along, kicked him in the head.
Yeah, this was a classic. This feud this was interesting that the Raw title match clearly was booked as less important.
By the way, we forgot there actually were 2 special attraction matches here. One of the only times in this that we're even going to talk about the women in here. At 5:56, the Playboy Bunny Mania Lumberjill match. Beth Phoenix and Melina with Santino Marella defeated Maria and Ashley. This was most notable for having Snoop Dogg as a part of it. They were playing up the whole Playboy thing here, Playboy Bunny, blah, 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 blah.
So notable that I completely forgot it
Yeah,
existed.
but, they played it up big on the show. Title match that closed the show. They couldn't do it streak versus streak, but it was streak versus title because, again, Edge was not undefeated at WrestleMania.
Although
after Money in the Bank.
He had actually never been beaten at WrestleMania.
Yeah,
he just had not won a Money in the Bank.
They didn't bother to play that up, but they could have. And you know what? It might have put more heel heat on him if he'd gone for that technicality. But At 23.50 in the match to close the show, Undertaker defeated Edge. I'll tell you what, I give them a world of credit because we're going to talk about this subsequently with Triple H and Orton, just as we did with Triple H and Jericho. It is so friggin' hard to follow something like Michaels Flair, and I don't remember too many people.
Mayweather, too.
Yeah, and Mayweather. And I don't remember too many people bitching about this match at the end of the night,
No,
Kyle.
unlike the Triple H matches that you just referenced, this is the best match of the show. This is a top 17 or 18 WrestleMania match of all time.
You put this even above Michaels and Flair. Okay, interesting.
Oh, I think significantly.
Okay.
I would put this at like 4.25.
Okay.
So it's almost a full star better than Michaels Flair.
Okay. All right, well, these were the notable matches.
By the way, that WrestleMania, better than 23. This is a good WrestleMania overall.
This is probably my favorite of the modern era. Keeping in mind, and I didn't get to see 26, but
I like 26 better. We haven't gotten to that.
We're going to get to one here. What a dropped ball. When you got WrestleMania 25 coming up, and you may disagree with me, but I thought the marketing was stupid. Because first of all, not only was it not the 25th anniversary of WrestleMania, it was WrestleMania 25. It struck me like, hey, morons, if you don't say that, then next year for WrestleMania 26, you could trot out the 25th anniversary of WrestleMania. You could use the 25 thing twice. I thought it was stupid.
I'm going to be very honest.
Yeah.
I wasn't watching wrestling a lot going into this show.
Yeah.
I don't remember a lot. I remember hearing that I don't know what I was doing. All I remember is I heard about that the build was really good for Michaels Undertaker, and so I kind of got in tune with that. But the rest of this show is very forgettable, except obviously it's real close to 5 stars. I'd give it 4 3/4, the Michaels Undertaker match. It's really all there is with the show. To me, this show is only slightly better than, say, a WrestleMania 13, where it's a total one-match show, but not one match based on build, necessarily one match based on how good it is in the ring.
Here's what they did a couple of different times in these couple of years here, and it's so stupid. Basically waiting until Elimination Chamber to set up your Mania matches. They've learned the lesson the last 2 years. They got it teased out enough that you can see the contours of what's coming.
Even if you don't make it official, you got to give people an idea.
Yeah.
And Michaels Undertaker's great. I've got it number 5 all-time WrestleMania matches.
I can see that.
People probably have it higher.
Right.
There are some who believe this is a 5-star match, that it was the best match of the last 10 years. I wouldn't go quite that strong. It's on the short list.
Right.
But other than that, there isn't a darn thing that I care about on that WrestleMania besides that.
Yeah,
The Triple H Orton thing really fizzled after a hot start, and it was another instance of a Triple H World Title match, just like WrestleMania 18, where he couldn't follow a match that came across as bigger.
Right
at the end.
Right.
That's a Triple H issue, I think.
And the thing is, when you look at this, that this was held at Reliance Stadium in Houston, which is the heir to the Houston professional football legacy from the Astrodome. This was not heir to the legacy of WrestleMania 17 because this show sucked. The title matches didn't have a whole lot going for them. The one did because it was a rivalry one. Triple H defeated Randy Orton. They reopened that whole storyline from years past. But it was a thing where Randy Orton, they were having him go psychotic. He was attacking members of the McMahon family. And then a little bit of somewhat kind of breaking kayfabe. It was a big shock when Triple H came out to rescue Stephanie because they hadn't acknowledged anything between them on camera ever.
Yeah,
dating back to the breakup. Yeah. So it was a little shocking in that way.
It started out well, but it was one of those things, diminishing returns as you actually got less interested in the match as the show got near. That when Triple H came out is when the angle peaked.
Yeah.
And every week you cared less and less to the point when the match came and there was a much better match, no one really cared.
And this one, it couldn't close the show going after Undertaker Michaels.
No.
It simply couldn't. 23:35, so they took their time on it, too. Here's the thing, too, and I saw on Wikipedia Randy Orton pointing out that the stip didn't seem to make much sense. If Triple H had been disqualified or counted out, Randy Orton would have won the championship. This one, for the hatred of the build, called for like a street fight or something like that. But beyond that, if you remember, when Triple H was coming out backstage or before the match, who was giving him a pep talk? Vince McMahon. if you're Vince McMahon, chairman, you control the company, whatever, why would you permit a stip that would keep your son-in-law from going out there and getting full bloody revenge on your family's enemy?
Well, I think you're analyzing a little.
But in a kayfabe sense, does that? Am I being Nelson nitpicker on that?
Yeah, a little.
All right.
I just think it was one of those things that by that point, apathy was running wild.
Yeah, it was. The previous title match was nothing to write home about. John Cena defeated Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship. It was a three-way match that the Big Show was in, also a triple threat match at 14:45. Notable for the finish where John Cena gave the attitude adjustment to both. I guess he had both Cena and Big Show on his back, and it was a one-spot match. Very little heat between them. They tried to wedge some kind of storyline of Vicky being between Edge and the Big Show, some kind of love triangle there. One of the worst.
I don't remember that at all.
One of the worst world title match setups in history. It was absolutely, absolutely pathetic. The less said about that one, the better.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah, like I said, I just don't remember watching a lot of wrestling.
They weren't even caring.
This was like, I don't know what I was doing. I need someone with me at those. What was I doing in the spring of
09?
Of 09 that I just didn't. I was just not paying attention.
Well, I can't blame you because this was some real crap. Three other things worth mentioning on this thing. None of these things in a whole lot of detail, but 13-16 Extreme Rules match. Matt Hardy defeated Jeff Hardy. They had pulled the trigger yet again on a Hardy versus Hardy.
This was kind of disappointing a little bit, wasn't it? Too?
It was. I mean, it was better than the first Hardy versus Hardy feud, but that's setting the bar low. Yeah.
That's right. I remember that Matt had come back and turned on Jeff.
That he was like the secret stalker. That he'd been stalking him all these months and causing him to have car accidents and beat up in the stairwell and whatnot.
They were that was okay, I guess.
Yeah, and then Jeff Hardy ended up getting his revenge subsequently. The token celebrity involvement in a match here. They had this coming on the heels of the movie The Wrestler. Mickey Rourke was in the corner of the legends, as was Ric Flair. Chris Jericho defeated Roddy Piper, Ricky Steamboat, and Jimmy Snuka.
This was kind of notable for Steamboat kind of getting a little run out of it. Remember, he got to wrestle Jericho the next month one-on-one.
And the thing was, too, that Ricky Steamboat, in my mind's eye, and he worked great in this match for what he was able to do and everything like that. Didn't seem to have lost much, but such a strikingly handsome man. But I'm looking at him in this match with the hairline, like, oh my God, I feel like I'm watching Vern Gagne.
Yeah,
it really felt like that. Frankly, not to second guess them, but I will. I would have just booked it as Jericho versus Steamboat. Steamboat's coming out of retirement to try to shut Jericho's match. You still could have put Flair and Mickey Rourke in his corner. I think it would have been better that way. It
was funny that they didn't want Mickey Rourke at first.
No, they didn't. They didn't.
Vince McMahon didn't think it was a big, and then the movie started getting critical acclaim, and they had to beg him.
And they teased it that he was actually going to be in the match, and I think he was going to. Except the Oscars people were like, "Yo, Mick, if you want to be taken seriously as an actor and have a chance to win an Oscar here, you're not going to do that." Then he gets
that's kind of shitty by the Oscars.
Well, and then he gets screwed anyways because friggin' that loser Sean Penn. For the Harvey Milk movie, which was disgraceful in its own right, he ends up stealing the Oscar.
Oh, now here you go again. Okay.
Yeah, the glorification of
what did
immorality.
You think should have won? The act of valor? Okay.
I would have given it to Mickey Rourke, quite frankly.
Oh, yes.
As a loyal pro wrestling fan, and for no other reasons.
I thought that movie was very good. I didn't think it was like a great.
I thought it was very good. I
thought it was very. I was a solid 4-star film.
Let me ask you
Not
this.
a movie of the year candidate, though.
Did you giggle as I did in that? You know how they were filming scenes?
That was too short.
Well, it was relatively, yeah. But you know how they were filming scenes at the ROH shows? Mm-hmm. Were you giggling a little bit as I was at the notion that the biggest anti-nostalgia promotion in the history of pro wrestling was the home for, Randy the Ram Robinson? That was kind of funny irony, wasn't it?
I kind of liked that Necro Butcher. I thought he deserved a nod for best supporting actor.
I thought so. A promotion that actually that like build in a storyline build Jerry Lynn of all people as being over the hill is going to be the one that in this movie is getting behind 80s icon Randy the Ram Robinson. The only other thing I'm going to mention, and as much as and I think it was the Kid Rock concert that aced this out. Didn't Kid Rock play this show? I thought somebody had a musical performance, and if it was Kid Rock, and I'm a big mark for him, but it should not have aced out. This was a dark match here, a DVD only. The Colognes, Carlito and Primo, defeated John Morrison and Miz. They did finally unify the tag team titles, but it was a dark match at WrestleMania, Kyle. Where are their priorities?
They would scoff at you. And I'm not, I mean, it's one of those things.
It's also where their titles don't draw.
Yes, it is. But what do you want me to do? I mean, I've been saying it for 6 podcasts now that I've been lamenting the death. Okay, I mean, the British Bulldogs and Heart Foundation ain't walking through that door.
Well, as long as you agree with me, I can.
Well, that means you're right.
Behind
of course.
That. Yes, exactly. We move on to WrestleMania 26, which I have to
WrestleMania.
say. All right, I didn't see this one.
Really?
My stupid fantasy baseball league chose to have its draft that night, as it looks like they're going to do this year and screw me too. But you know what? You chodes aren't going to stop me. I think I'm going to order Mania on my laptop, and my partner and I will be watching that while we still beat your asses.
Excuse me.
Hey, I'm a multi-time champion of this league. I can be watching WrestleMania. I can chew gum and walk at the same time.
We should have you in our fantasy football league this year. We have a few spots are good up. Would you do that?
That would be tremendous.
We're going to fire the hipster contingent from the league.
Could always use
they're cheap.
I could always use a new
because
challenge.
they're cheap. We're firing the small market teams because they can't compete.
I could always use a new challenge,
yes.
But this one here,
I really liked this WrestleMania.
The build was better in a lot of ways. I guess we could start with a little bit of.
This is one where we could talk about several matches. I thought.
Yeah, well, we could start with a little continuity from the previous year. Undertaker Michaels did end up being a rematch. They did it where Undertaker didn't want to deign to face Shawn Michaels again. He basically escalated a campaign to get his attention, culminating in hitting him with a camera, in the Elimination Chamber. And that was, I thought they could have played this up a little more. Maybe this is me being Nelson nitpicker, but as far as how badly Shawn Michaels wanted the match, who benefited from the actions of Shawn Michaels against The Undertaker? Chris Jericho, who had the feud of 2008 with Shawn Michaels.
Yeah,
that's
true.
How badly Shawn Michaels wanted a piece of him. I thought they could have played that up.
They probably
had
forgotten. It was probably lost on them.
Sadly, it probably was. But
this was, and smartly they had this close the show.
Yeah.
As in most rematches of epics, it's not as good as the original, but this one's close. I mean, it's most people would consider this one just a hair below the first.
Right.
I think this is a top 12 WrestleMania match of all time to show you, where I've got the first one at number 5. This one's like number 12, I think. I would say 4 3/4, 4.5.
Okay.
It's a wonderful match, and obviously it's the last match of Shawn Michaels' career.
Yeah. So
that you knew it was going to end. I mean, it wasn't. They did their best. I thought it was pretty cool.
Describe the finishing sequence, because it seemed to be a little bit of a callback to 2 years before when Shawn Michaels retired Ric Flair. There was some kind of thing at the end.
Where he didn't want he grabbed them, and he's like he was just like, why won't you stay down? And he was just basically like, look, I'm ending your career right here. It was an overly dramatic tombstone, but it worked in this situation. I really liked this match. It was a hair, just because. It was ironic that they threw the stip in, but I bought Michaels as having a better chance the year previous.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was like most people, where you knew Michaels was losing.
See, but I didn't think Michaels was ready to be all the way done yet.
Oh,
so
he wasn't. He was still performing at a high level, but just because.
But I mean that he personally. That's what I mean, because for him to say, you know what, guys, I've had enough. Write me into a match where I'm gonna. I didn't think he personally was ready to let go.
I think it's better to go out like that than like say a Ric Flair, where it's like, come on, buddy. Good
God! I mean, if you're going to compare him to Flair, I couldn't agree more with that. So that was a tremendous one. It's funny because from the tail end of the previous mini episode here, number 8 in the series, the two names we've been mentioning together throughout this as being the biggest stars of the era. Leviathan and Prototype.
You know him as Batista and Cena.
Yeah. They did finally face off here, and this was the end of the Batista era at WrestleMania, at least for the foreseeable future, because he would end up leaving the company in the next couple of months here. They faced off. It was a pretty good feud between them. Nah, because there was like another 2 months. Yeah, they faced off like 2 more times. Well, the next one at...
I don't remember the exact date there.
They did the thing at... they might not have had closed circuit where you were at the time, but the The way they did it at Extreme Rules, it was a last man standing match, and they had Cena do it. The way that he won the match, Batista, like he had him down, and Batista's feet were like by the ring post. So Cena like jumped up, grabbed a roll of duct tape, duct
the old
taped
Randy
his feet.
Savage crush finish.
Yeah, and did that and won that way. And then they did one more match where he put him through the grate on the floor with the whole, worked thingy there. But anyways, they had faced off at SummerSlam 08 and kind of a throwaway match, which was disappointing. But
It would have been so much. It's one of those things that
it would have been a lot
not
more.
a lot of people remembered, but enough did that it somewhat. It would have been so great for them to hype this as their first match. But it was good. It was two big, like I said, it was the two biggest stars of this, as far as new stars that were created of this period wrestling, and you knew Cena would go over, and
Batista
it was
had
good.
Batista
It was like a 4-star match.
Right, Batista had gone through this vicious heel turn the previous autumn. Taking out Rey Mysterio.
It was good. Batista was very good as a heel.
He was good in that
run.
role. Yeah, and it.
He also dressed very well during this role.
I was just about to mention that. I liked it, and it was like what was great
Nothing was more
I
awkward than Dave Meltzer complimenting the way he dressed and Batista having no idea how to respond.
Yeah, but it was like that's what was great because he was going for some kind of eclectic. I'm not going to quite say hipster kind of a thing.
No. I'm total opposite hipster.
Right.
It was like club guy, kind of.
Yeah, kind of like club guy. I guess that's but it was like it definitely wasn't cookie cutter. And it was like he came out and it was like you didn't have guys dressing like that on TV. Like now today, everybody's ripping off Chris Jericho's thing, and not to play into his own storyline, but the heel and the suit.
Yeah.
His look was it was great. Most and this is the thing. This is how you know he's a company favorite. Most guys can't get away with that. Mm-hmm. Most guys have to look more cookie cutter than he did in that era.
Yeah.
It was a nice.
It was
touch.
very good. I thought he did a very good job.
You and I are fans of the subtle touches that just add to it.
Yeah,
and
he had the Lacoste T-shirts and stuff like that. Yeah, he was like a Jersey Shore type thing.
Kind
almost.
of.
Yeah.
It was just really good.
Yeah, Batista. Yeah, he kind of
only 13:31, shorter than I might have thought it would have been.
Well,
but
you're not going to do a 60-minute Iron Man with these two.
Right, beat him by submission with the STF. Chris Jericho in the other world title match for the World Heavyweight Championship in 1548 shockingly defeated Edge because this was a revenge storyline.
This seemed like one of those things that they just did it to screw with people.
Yeah.
Well, I remember, didn't Edge then go on to
like a heel turn shortly thereafter because it was out of frustration.
He didn't win it, though, because they did something with Jack Swagger.
Well, here's what it was, because Swagger would win Money in the Bank here. Swagger cashed in, like Edge laid out Jericho on the next SmackDown. Swagger came in, took out Jericho. I think it's the only heel-over-heel Money in the Bank thing that there's ever been.
Does anyone remember that Jack Swagger had a cup of coffee? You talk about that was, I was just like, whoa.
But that's
that too quick to elevate him?
But it was very damaging. That it did. He'd already been the ECW champ, but he was not ready for this.
No, he was not.
But here's the thing, though.
He's just not that good.
Edge, quote-unquote, got his heat back because he had a cage match with Jericho at Extreme Rules, but Jericho no longer had the title. So it really...
I didn't like
it. Took the steam out of Edge's return.
I thought, Edge
had been hurt the previous summer. They were tag team champions. Jericho then went around bad-mouthing him.
It was a very natural thing to do, and they actually did it, and then they kind of...
And Edge won the Rumble.
Yeah, it was basically a copy of the Cena Rumble from 2 years previous.
Yeah.
Where Edge was a surprise and came out towards the end and won it.
Only in this case, he wasn't going up against the guy who injured him, but he was going up against the guy who badmouthed him, called him a loser in his absence, etc., and essentially turned him face by doing that.
Yeah, and Edge hadn't been a face in a long time. He had been a heel ever since the Lita thing. I mean, he'd been a heel for 5 years and a damn good one at that.
Right.
And I thought he should... Wrestling 101 says he just goes over. Don't outsmart yourself.
Yeah. They tried to outsmart the room on this one here. The only other things worth mentioning here, in terms of like the top stars of the era, it is worth mentioning. This was not long after the Randy Orton face turn. He ended up defeating Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase in a triple threat match. It was basically the Legacy implosion match. What was interesting was they started this with Randy Orton being the abusive, quote-unquote, mentor towards these guys, seemingly building towards a face turn for one or both of them. Somewhere along the way, they flipped the jib, and it was a thing of like, we're going to use this, we're going to treat these two punks as being so obnoxious that Randy Orton will be justified in turning on them. And and
it was
would
also,
make a better face.
It was also one of those things where the crowd, I think, just
yeah,
it's
had a lot to
just
do with
this
it.
era of wrestling where the crowd is just pulling for the star,
Right.
and that's what they went with. I mean,
Right. And Orton was a pretty hot heel, especially going back to the previous year's match against
Yeah.
Triple H.
And Cody Rhodes is very good, but DiBiase kind of is mediocre
Right.
at best.
Right. It's one of the other big names of the era too. It's worth mentioning, and this is somewhat of a change of the guard type matchup because Triple H is somewhere in the eclipse of his career at this present time. This was one of the least important matches he ever had at Mania, but it is with a guy who is part of their next crop of stars here. He defeated Sheamus in 1209.
And how appropriate that he wins.
In a grudge match, yeah. But and then Sheamus did the thing the next month, putting him out for a period of time. But it's a thing where, again, Sheamus...
And then Triple H came back and buried him again.
Yeah, that's true. But Sheamus, Triple H's real-life good buddy / bag carrier, much like... with Orton and Batista previously, why Triple H chose to work with him. But so it's notable in a historical sense.
When he said bag carrier, I thought you were going to talk about Ron Simmons and Harley
Race.
Yes.
Which I should have asked Harley Race about that in the time we had with him recently on the program.
Whatever happened to Clash 19?
The only other thing worth mentioning here, I believe, the return of Bret Hart. They brought him back.
Yeah, this is definitely worth mentioning.
In the infamous January 4th, 2010 Raw that he was on. Interestingly, that almost 2 months to the day, Bret Hart made the first of his 2 appearances in the FDH Lounge and totally had a poker face. And I don't think I'll ever go back or whatever. The ink was probably not even still wet on the contract.
Good. No
so
offense to you, Ricky, but that's the way he should do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't say that in a. I'm not mad, but I'm just kind of giggling about it a little bit. I
Sure,
guess.
yes.
I got worked like everybody else in the business does. But
like Jake Digman did in the elevator.
Yes, like Jake Digman did. Yes, by Jimmy Jacobs' faux tears that night.
Yeah.
Go check out. I think it's mini episode 21 of the Lounge, folks, where we expound on this. Somewhere in the early 20s. I think it's 21. But Bret Hart came back. It was a deal where he was going to have a grudge match with Mr. McMahon.
Such an organic feud.
Yeah,
it was a great move on paper. It's something they'd want that. Internally they obviously probably wanted to do for a very long time.
Right.
It was just a question of bringing
When was
Bret back.
Because Bret, let us remember, and let us go back to the SNS coverage of WrestleMania 22. Bret took some baby steps back. He had done the DVD. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame that year. But in 2006, Bret was still uncomfortable enough that he didn't even want to appear at WrestleMania for the traditional wave at the crowd and smile at the crowd.
Which in retrospect kind of seems petty and silly.
Well, in retrospect, yeah, the fact that he would go back and work an actual thing a couple of years later. And again, the only thing about Bret, and this is where I have a little bit of a question, and I guess I'll call it agree to disagree with guys like Bret Hart and Mick Foley and whatever, is when they do stuff and it's like, when they're like, I'm different than everybody else in the business because I'll never do this. I'll never sell out by doing this. I'll never, in Mick Foley's case, I'll never come back after I've retired.
Yeah.
In Bret Hart's case, I'll never cheapen this by making it into an angle. Don't say you're never going to do something and then turn around and do it.
Or just don't be so. Yeah, I mean, people could change their mind.
Right.
But don't be so.
But don't paint yourself into a corner. He painted himself into a corner.
But he should have done that. This was something that should have been done. Now that being said, it fell flat.
Yeah, it did. It was a deal where the Harts were at ringside, and it was a deal where supposedly they were all in Mr. McMahon's pocket. Then they turned on him. The part about that was kind of funny. I
thought that was so unnecessary and excessive. I didn't know why they did that.
You know what? And this might. Rarely are they too smart for the room. This might have been one of the times, because to the smart fans, the Harts are like the most dysfunctional friggin' bunch of I hate you, you hate me, blah 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 type family.
To me, it just,
and a lot of them do envy Bret for being the most successful one.
Yeah, but to me, it just reeked of the family wanting to get on the show. I thought it was,
and Bruce was the special referee. Figures that he. Yeah.
I thought that whole family involvement of the trial was so unnecessary, and just,
right.
And it was one of those things that it was done properly with Bret just completely kicking his ass, but the live crowd was, I don't know if it went on too long or what, if it was just like the result was so inevitable.
Right.
It didn't work. It was. I remember that being the major disappointment of this show.
It didn't. And actually,
like the Triple H Orton thing of a few years previous, of the year previous.
Right.
It was one of those deals where you got less, and it started out at a very high level. Obviously,
Right.
Montreal screw job. Everyone knew about it. They did a very good job when the night Brett came back. There's a lot of heat, a lot of interest. But as you got closer to the event, you just cared less and less. You know, it was funny to the point where, you know, I cared more about a Cena Batista or a Michaels Taker a lot more than this. And this should have been like one of the biggest things ever, and most people forget about this just 2 years later.
The one purpose that it did serve, and this was really good, and I wish it hadn't been fleeting, but the Hart Dynasty actually got a good run out of this thing here. They ended up becoming they ended up winning the tag pennies in the next month or so here and getting a good run.
Yeah,
and
how long did that last?
Yeah, true. They got buried and then broken up. I do actually see one other thing we should talk about as we're getting closer to the present day and historical significance, because he's now one of the biggest stars in the company and a headliner this year. CM Punk in his first singles match at WrestleMania after being in Money in the Bank the couple of previous years.
And winning it 2 years in a row.
Yes, winning it 2 years in a row. I was surprised when we were looking at this at 07. I'd forgotten he was in it in 07. So he was actually in it 3 years in a row. In this one, he ends up getting a relatively high-profile match against Rey Mysterio. CM Punk had the Straight Edge Society at the time with Luke Gallows and Serena. Had he won, Mysterio would have had to have joined. Mysterio defeated him in a criminally short 6:30.
Yeah, I remember this was way too short, and this is when Punk did the storyline I think a lot of people would have hoped he was going to do earlier, what he had done in Ring of Honor in that heel run he had initially against Raven, that phenomenal. That's about as good of an indie feud as there's ever been.
I just always thought, though, that this was an awkward gimmick for the PG era, because what are you going to have? A fan or have a fan favorite come out there? No, you know what? I want to smoke my dope, man. Yeah, that would have gotten over during the Attitude Era.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Wrong
to me, it
place,
was one of those
wrong time.
things that, 4 or 5 years earlier against an RVD, that'd go well.
Keep in mind Kurt Angle with the self-righteousness and how it got over. And Kurt Angle at one point was bragging about being a virgin, and it really got him over as a heel.
Yeah. Steve Austin, obviously would have been the dream scenario.
Yeah,
to this day, that's always talked about as a match that they could,
Yeah, so aside from the awkwardness of that and the shortness of the match, it was noteworthy in that way. That takes us up to
last year.
WrestleMania 27 last year,
which I think was a dud.
I do too.
I've never seen a wrestler with so much filler. There weren't a lot of matches, and it seemed like none of them really got the time.
Well, there's not going to be that many this year either.
Except the Triple H Undertaker. And to me, you can pretty much just... This bleeds into this year's. I think we can almost connect them because the top two matches on this show lead into this year's. You have
they do.
Triple H Undertaker
had
the great match, and it was great. They were given, of course, because of who they are, they were given some liberties that
no holds barred match
that the other mid card guys don't get. Well, they're not mid card, but mid card guys don't get,
sure.
A Cody Rhodes. I mean, can you imagine if an up and comer was given some of these parameters?
Right.
Remember they did a chair shot to the head in this match. They did get fined.
Right,
but. If somebody else does it, they're probably getting a little more than getting fined.
Triple H had to pay into the company coffers. The punchline writes itself.
Yeah. But it was very good. It was top 12, top 13.
Yeah.
I thought, as far as Undertaker matches go the last 3 years, I think it's been a very, very subtle decrease, but they've all been very good. The Undertaker, who had this great streak but no really good matches, the last 3 years he's had a match of the year candidate each time.
Yeah.
So hats off to him.
And this could well be 4 being with the atmosphere of Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, they're
competing against the ghosts of what they've done before, but by the same token,
here's the thing, man.
What's available to you can elevate it.
But here's the issue I got. They have to violate the PG rules for this.
And they might.
Because it's end of an era. They're talking about an old era. There needs to be blood.
Yeah.
I don't care about these Chris Nowinski reports. These two guys are fine. I want
don't
chair shots to the head.
No. I don't want that. I mean, I'm not. I'm not even necessarily.
There needs to be a level of violence in this match. There needs to be a level of violence that they don't do anymore.
You can do chair shots to the back or whatever. Look, I'm not even necessarily the biggest fan of either one of these guys, but I don't want to see them be vegetables. I believe the Nowitzki stuff. I don't want that.
I'm saying I do too, but I'm saying these guys are not regular participants. Where I agree. Where what it was, it's sustained. I don't think there's been an instance in wrestling history where that chair shot. Now Benoit took some terrible ones.
How about like one of those foil pie pans that would make a loud noise? I'll settle for that to the head.
Yeah, to me, they need to go back to a level of violence they don't do for this. Otherwise, I think it's going to be a disappointment. And Michaels is the ref now, too, to up the ante.
Here's the interesting thing. So we're going to talk about this for at least two of the matches here in terms of last year and this year being joined together like few WrestleManias ever. You almost have to go back to maybe 4 and 5. Yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind. Because let's start with this match, with the finish of it. Because let us remember, Triple H dominated the offense in this match.
Do you know what was odd? Is that they make it believe that this wasn't like always on the books. I always thought that, like, remember Triple H came out the next night after this match and basically, I know you'll be back and I'll be waiting for you. Yeah. Right then and there, I'm like, okay, I already know the top two matches at next year's WrestleMania. It's going to be Cena Rock and Triple H Undertaker. And they made it seem like they were waffle. I can't think. I mean, they did that the way last year's match was booked, and I'm fine with this. I like when they do long-term booking.
Right.
Was clearly designed to do a rematch.
Yeah.
Right as soon as this match was over and they did the Undertaker, my God, I've never seen the Undertaker beaten like this before.
Undertaker was carried out. Yeah. It was portrayed as a complete fluke that he managed to get Triple H in the triangle chokehold at the very end when he was about to smash him with a sledgehammer.
I liked the way it was booked, but it was clearly designed to book to a rematch for this year.
Yeah, that was. And then the main event, which is one of the crappiest main events, worst matches to end a show in a long, long time. And look, hey, the Miz.
It doesn't speak well to the Miz.
The Miz is a Cleveland guy. I like the Miz a lot. I still think he's got a great run as a face in front of him at some point. I'm not going to put all of this on him. He did suffer concussion late in the going here. The booking was bad. Again, here's the problem with this. This was booked, and when they interjected The Rock in it as guest host last year, while the match wasn't a triple threat for the title, personality-wise, it was booked as a triple threat.
Yeah, people just wanted to... The main draw here was not a world title match. It was what is The Rock going to do?
Right.
Any cost scene of the match. Look, I totally agreed with The Miz getting the championship last year, but he wasn't booked particularly well. And this is one of those things I fear in a couple of years people are going to make the frickin' Miz main event at WrestleMania.
Well, that's their own damn fault because they've booked him into oblivion over the last year. Don't give the guy the rub that goes along with a win like this and then just defecate on him. Okay, all right, granted, he should have caught a guy when he didn't come out of the ring here. Are we going to do that? Are we going to blame him for the Survivor Series buy rate because, it didn't get over because they couldn't get any heat on Cena and The Rock leading up to it anyways? So, no, it's ridiculous. Bad booking. There was bad booking around this match.
Yeah, I this is a bad WrestleMania. I think this one and 25 were the only WrestleManias in the 20s.
Right.
Certainly the only ones in this particular podcast. And obviously I liked 2021 a lot. So, yeah, going all the way back to WrestleMania.
Right.
These were the only two subpar ones.
Right. And this is a thing where, and it was supposed to end by, and this is what was so screwy, it was supposed to end as a double count-out when they were outside the ring there. Or maybe that was an impromptu thing with the double count-out because of Miz and the concussion, and they went through the barrier and weren't supposed to. But anyways, Rock restarts the match, gives Cena the rock bottom. The Miz pins him in total cheap fashion.
And again, logistically, it's a nightmare because you have the Rock, who's supposed to be this big baby face,
who allowed the big heel to win.
Yeah, and he's this conquering baby face. Oh, he's going to bring back the era, and the Miz, who certainly. I mean, if you take into account that The Rock is supposed to be the flag bearer for these disenchanted Attitude Era fans who don't like John Cena, those same people aren't fans of The Miz. So it was logistically one of those things, again, like you said, you'd probably have to go back to WrestleMania 4 and 5,
Right.
where they knew what the main event at next year's WrestleMania would be.
Right.
But they didn't do a good enough.
Right.
Cena had, unlike WrestleMania 4, where they did need to establish Randy Savage, they didn't need to establish John Cena here. I guess they just needed to establish friction, but that friction was already kind of there.
Right.
So it's not as clean, but at least they were thinking.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. And the way that it went down, I'm going to posit something here you may or may not agree with, but this crowd in the Georgia Dome last year, the reaction after the match, and I know you're saying that okay, it wasn't necessarily a pro-Miz crowd, but you were starting to see a little bit of that. We talked about that at the time. People cheering for the booking.
Yeah,
they were trying very hard to push Miz as being a legitimate guy.
Doing that. Well, the thing is, he wasn't booked well, though, I don't think.
But here's the thing. This is what I want to posit and see if you agree with this. The Miz, if we're just going by crowd reaction after the match, the Miz winning this match got more of a babyface reaction than the aforementioned John Cena over Triple H at WrestleMania 22. There were more people cheering and cheering wildly for this.
Again, I think it's more of anti-Cena.
Okay.
Than pro-Miz. I mean, look at the Miz now.
Yeah, you might be right.
Look, to me, yeah, they haven't done the Miz any favors since this match.
Right.
But he's also very limited.
That's true.
You know, when you do it, you know, I remember in the SNS days saying the Miz could be their next honky-tonk man. I thought they should have actually pushed him when everyone really, really hated him and had no respect for him whatsoever. But the problem is when you do that and push a guy, what happened to the honky-tonk man after he lost? He just returned jobs to everybody. And I'm not saying the Miz is... He had advanced past the level of a honky-tonk man. Obviously, he got a world title run instead of an intercontinental title run. I'm not saying what's happened to him, you know, recently in particular is fair, but there was only one way to go.
Right.
You know?
Well, by the way, too, and people can find this on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/the FDH Lounge, an appearance on the show of the great Dave Meltzer leading up to last year's WrestleMania. And we were talking about that with The Miz, and he was talking about, you know, it's just there's something that's just not quite there with him, whatever. And I said, Dave, it seems to me it's a thing where the company just is married to the whole paradigm of the chicken-esque heel. You got the heel can only win by cheating, whatever. And Meltzer was like, "You're right about that. The problem is that's got a mid-card ceiling on it, and this guy needs to be booked stronger."
Like I said, the honky-tonk man. The Miz.
I think Meltz would have completely agreed with your comparison.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that star that he brings from the outside. You know, obviously being on MTV, that he did have enough star quality to get beyond the mid-card level.
He's got a lot of natural charisma to him. He's improved as a worker.
Yeah.
He's not the biggest guy, but they've all shrunk.
I just don't know if history's going to shine very brightly on his appearance in the last match here. I think he's going to be kind of an afterthought in the whole Rock Cena storyline.
He may be, and
he was just there.
They're trying to interject him at the last minute into this year's one, and I don't know.
They'd be better served not doing that.
Yeah, they should just put him in the Teddy versus Johnny match. But
awful.
The match that had the most heat last year, going into WrestleMania, and what an indictment of the way that they book their own talent. The match that had the most heat by far did not involve two present full-time wrestlers. It involved the two present full-time announcers, Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler. There was molten heat for this one.
Again, though, it was one of those things. Like
in the months to come, they beat it into the ground.
Yeah, it was one of those things that we saw, you know, with some of the, you know, the Brett Vince or the Triple H Orton, that law of diminishing returns.
Yeah,
and then it was one of those. It was compounded with just the bonehead decision to have Cole get the win.
Reverse decision by the anonymous Raw general manager who, by the way, whatever happened to him? What was the resolution of that storyline, Kyle?
That's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad.
You know what?
That's bad.
You know what's hilarious?
That's bad. You know, no one talks about that. They went on that whole thing, and look.
Dude, how much will you pop if at the end of Teddy Johnny, that would be awesome. Wouldn't that be the spot to bring it back?
Yes, and it would be, and I'm glad that we're transitioning with it with the announcers.
Yeah.
No one, by and large, gives a damn about like. I hate this Teddy Long, John Laurinaitis feud.
Right.
Because the whole general manager gimmick is so dead. People don't care. It doesn't draw any money. Just whatever happened to the days of a guy, like, it just takes away from time.
By the same token, it's so obvious who needs to go over. Because I'll tell you what, regardless of how this whole thing started, John Laurinaitis basically playing himself as the clueless douchebag corporate lackey is a great character. Totally needs to go over. We need more of Laurinaitis and Otunga. By far, we need that.
Yeah, I have, for the life of me, never understood how Teddy Long has stayed general manager of SmackDown this long.
Well, here's the thing. I hope they find something still to do with him.
Yeah.
He's a good on-camera presence.
Well, I don't know about that.
He's entertaining, anyways.
He is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
If you're making a best of Teddy Long DVD, how long is that lasting?
You got to remember, I'm an old school NWA guy.
Yeah, I thought he kind of wasn't that good then either.
With the do-rag managing Doom, I don't know. But by the way,
WCW's version of black people. That's okay.
By the way, if you're wondering what WCW's policy on the juice was back in the day, keep in mind how big he looked standing next to Ron Simmons and Butch Reed.
Yeah.
That'll tell you all you need to know. But now this match here again, over Book-a-Mania by having the reverse decision here because Lawler wouldn't release the hold on him. Jack Swagger was in Michael Cole's corner. It involved the demolition of the coal mine, which was well overdue. It did lead to JR coming out and calling the rest of the card, which, by the way, too, all due respect to JR, it's kind of the same thing as The Rock. We sit here and romanticize because Michael Cole is just the drizzle and shiznits as an announcer. Do we forget how much around 04, 05, 06, there was some... I know I was feeling the JR fatigue, and some other people were too, because... I realized it's his job, and I know the little guy used to talk about how he would get across like the storylines in the Evolution days. If you're going to sit here and try and sell something like that as being as great as something in the Attitude Era, I'm sorry. That's the boy that cried wolf. JR might have been, but the fact that JR didn't have a lower level on his hype meter.
I think that was a disinterested person. I think he kind of been beaten out. You don't know because of his his relationship with the. You got to just get into his head, and only he can. His very tumultuous relationship with Vince McMahon.
Right.
That. He's had the rug jerked out from under him so many times.
Right.
What am I supposed to do?
Right.
I don't. I would still take Jim Ross calling a major show over Michael Cole any day of the week.
I would too. But I think we over-romanticize him just because everybody else sucks. I mean, JR was at his best in the Attitude Era, I would say, and then maybe the old school NWA.
Here's the thing. He can be both because he was two very different.
Right.
It was good old JR and
due respect, JR. I think your fastball's more like 92 when it used to be 95. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, he's like anybody. You have a peak for a reason,
right?
Because
we don't think
you can't
of announcers
sustain
as
a
being
high level.
Like that. Yeah,
but Michael Cole again. It's not always his fault that he's bad. The way having a heel lead announcer is logistically not smart.
I thought over the course and bridging from last year to this year, I thought had they put Michael Cole together with like Vicky and done like an Uber stable,
Michael Cole to me should be a manager,
right?
Because he can get heat.
But like some kind of coalition with Vicky, who's also a huge...
Coalition, too. They could
yes. It writes itself.
Yes.
It writes itself. All right, the other things here that we didn't hit yet, again, historical significance, two big stars who've only gotten bigger. Randy Orton defeated CM Punk. This was the waning days of the CM Punk heel run. This year he wasn't saddled with the Straight Edge Society. This year he was saddled by the New Nexus. The what was left of that drizzling crap run there.
Thank God he just broke free of that and just did his own thing. In
1448,
I was so mad he lost. That pissed me off too.
The match sucked because, and how often do you say that about a CM Punk match? Because everything was built around. They did the thing of where he hit Orton like in the leg with a screwdriver or something to set it up. So the match was basically a hobbled in the storyline, Randy Orton pursuing him for a whole match. I want to see Randy Orton and CM Punk without the storyline impediments.
Yeah, Orton's not great, but
he can be carried to a great match easily.
Yeah, I remember just being really irritated that Punk lost. And
right.
It's kind of funny, looking back the last couple of years, this Randy Orton's kind of been lost in the shuffle the last 3 WrestleManias now. A match against the Legacy Implosion.
Right.
This was, mid-card for...
Question of his health this year. That's why I got in with Kane. I think they didn't want to put him in anything where if there was any kind of a question where they'd have to take him out.
Because what's funny
He's
is
been very iffy.
I would much rather have seen Daniel Bryan versus Randy Orton. That'd be a lot more intriguing as a step-up match than Daniel Bryan versus Sheamus.
Except it might be more of a foregone conclusion about Daniel Bryan losing, just because it's almost impossible to imagine Randy Orton not getting that win at WrestleMania. But,
well, I would certainly put my 2 cents in and tell them otherwise.
Well, that would be very interesting. I'd love to be in that booking meeting. I
would be thrown out very quickly. I would need you to drive me home.
I had an inside joke I was going to make there, and I'll think better of it.
Thank you very much.
A celebrity, the token celebrity participation last year, John Morrison, Trish Stratus, and Snooki defeated Dolph Ziggler and Lay Cool with Vicky Guerrero. The big high spot here in this match, Snooki ends up hitting like a handspring.
I'll give it to her for as much crap as she takes.
Right.
As a person or whatever.
Right.
I mean, I don't know the woman well or at all. I thought she was okay.
I didn't think somebody as round as her could move like that. Props to her. I mean,
you know what I would do? You know what I'm going to say right now?
Are you the father, Kyle Ross?
No.
Okay.
I would do Snooki though. Most people always act like I'm saying things bizarre. Really? I mean, you wouldn't. I mean, come on.
Given enough beer or perhaps other substances in your case, yeah. I mean, it's I know you're not saying you do it sober, so that's fine. And what would be more appropriate than having drunk sex with Snooki?
Yes.
I don't think there's anything right about having sober sex with her. But anyways, this match, the best part about this was the inside thing of afterwards. The cold shoulder.
Yeah.
Trish Stratus goes to high five John Morrison, who was pissed because Melina didn't get the spot.
Oh, who cares?
By the end of the year,
point?
John Morrison and Melina were both out of the company.
Yeah, who cares? Melina, yeah. You know what, John? You should have been giving Melina the cold shoulder years ago and she was humping Batista, you moron. Back to the indies for you, pal.
And humping Mike Knox, allegedly.
Yeah.
Have you seen? Kids, go look this up on YouTube. There is a great shoot on there from Val Venus. Have you seen his shoot on John Morrison? You can't make a hoe into a housewife. Oh my God, Val Venus just is in rare form on that. Well, because he's good friends with Trish Stratus, so he's like, I'm going to say all the things my girl Trish couldn't say about you, John Morrison. Beautiful stuff.
I like Val Venus.
Yeah, exactly. The second match on the show, I'll mention this before we get to the opener, which will probably be the last one we need to talk about. I'll just mention this for historical perspective. Rey Mysterio has been one of the big stars of the last 10 years. Cody Rhodes is probably going to be one of the big stars of the next 10 years. They faced off in a singles match. You talk about matches that had the right outcome. Rey Mysterio put over Cody Rhodes.
Yes, and no Rey this year, huh?
No, injured again. And
his knees are destroyed. He shouldn't wrestle anymore. What does he have left to prove?
He may have one limited run, but that's...
No, I don't think a run.
I want to see him, and I was trying to think of the name. I can't, God, out of sight, out of mind.
Sin Cara?
So, yeah, I kept thinking Mystico. I'm like, where's Mystico? I want to see him in that, because that could be like a passing of the guard match.
Yeah, I think that would be fine, but look, man, that was 16 years ago he was having those legendary cruiserweight matches in WCW.
I agree.
I mean, there's no point to wrestle anymore.
I agree.
16 years after the fact.
Well, in terms of guys hanging it up, the opener, we didn't know it at the time. Shocking finish. I mean, shocking finish and shocking what we would find out afterwards. And I don't remember how much the medical news played into it. I don't know if ADR was ever set to go over. Alberto Del Rio was getting the monster push. He won the Royal Rumble. Again, a lot of the heat was on him, so you wouldn't necessarily expect a heel to win with as much heat on him. But in 11-10, Edge with Christian in his corner defeated Alberto Del Rio with Ricardo Rodriguez and Brodus Clay in a single match for the World Heavyweight Championship. Notable because for the first time, a world title or WWE title match opened WrestleMania. A lot of people thought that was a shot at those guys. Or disrespected the title.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Jim Ross has been blogging that he'd like to see Punk and Jericho go on first this year because the reason being they won't get their time cut then.
Right.
And that's what they might have done here. If you're going to cut time, you'll let the opener do what it needs to do, but once you're, starting to get to that Triple H Undertaker time, hey, we got to cut somebody's time.
Right.
So.
And there is something to be said for the notion that this is the all-star night of the year when everything on the card is here for a reason.
Yeah.
There's not as much, stigma.
And I'll say this, though. It's again, another reason why there should be 2 world title matches.
I would agree with that. Edge would end up vacating the belt shortly thereafter.
And he's going into the Hall of Fame this year.
He's going into the Hall of Fame this year, yeah. And as we set up for this year, we've talked about most of the things that are going to be on the build for this year. We talked about Rock Cena and how that came to be, Triple H and Undertaker with the setup for it again. We touched on Randy Orton and Kane, which again it was a last-minute program for Orton because they didn't know his availability. CM Punk working a best in the world storyline against a returning Chris Jericho. CM Punk has the WWE
falling
Championship.
a little flat, I think.
It kind
compared
of
to
is.
the other two, just because the other two are just the builds are so good.
Are you one of the people who questions the interjection of the personal stuff into? Does that dilute?
I thought it was good.
But here's the thing: if it's best in the world, best in the world, best in the world, oh, and your dad's a drug addict. I mean, those are like different directions. Is that not contradictory? Am I being Nelson Nitpicker to say
a little? I mean, I think it might. I don't
with
know if that came from the guys where they felt maybe okay, the best in the world thing isn't work. We need a little more to do. See, okay. Once again though, I think you and I agree. The whole best in the world thing.
Yeah.
First of all, people don't. I think they kind of almost need to get away with that because you're talking about a match that's going to be third from the top.
Yeah, but
and I don't like the whole best.
But this is the title that means the most in the company, and people know that. So there is.
Yeah,
that.
but this is going to come across as such the third biggest match on the card.
Oh, clearly.
So to say the winner of this is the best in the world, while I feel that CM Punk could make a legitimate claim to that crown as far as the touring regulars go.
That's true. Chris Jericho's been out the last year and a half. Yeah.
That. I don't know. I thought the stuff was good. I thought Jericho's promos were good. I really liked them a lot.
Maybe I'm putting 2 and 2 together here now. Maybe they switched focus to the personal stuff because maybe CM Punk realized after saying, "I've been swimming with the sharks while you've been dancing with the stars." Boy, he really kind of cut the feet out from underneath Jericho with that one, didn't he? Because if Jericho's the best in the world, where's he been? That's.
Well, no, I mean, the guy just came back and said he didn't have anything. I didn't think. I thought that was a good line.
Okay, all right.
I had no issue with that.
All right, maybe
I thought that was a very good line.
It was a very good line, but that's something for which Jericho has no answer, and you don't want to have anything where the one side has nothing to answer for.
I'd be like, well, I mean, he could say, "Look, how about the 7 years that came before that, pal?"
Okay,
I didn't have anything left to prove.
That's true. He was mostly upper mid card in those 7 years.
Yeah, I know.
So,
yeah. Again, that's the problem with doing the best in the world. I've never considered Chris Jericho the best in the world.
There are some that, as an in-ring performer, there are some that would have said like 2008 when he was in there with Michaels, and you don't think so? You're not one of those?
He's good use. Chris Jericho, I've always thought is a better character than a worker. I always thought he was slightly
true, but he's a first ballot Hall of Fame character, so.
Yes, but I've always thought that he was, as far as the workers who broke through from from the old WCW and came to WWE, I thought he was not nearly as talented in the ring as Benoit or Guerrero.
Well, I would agree with that, but there's no shame in that necessarily.
No, I'm not saying he should be ashamed, and I mean,
no.
Not good. I mean, he's an A- level worker,
right.
But I mean.
Well, the funny thing is, the other match, while it doesn't have a whole lot of heat on it and everything like that, and really should, the other world title match, when you're talking about guys who are best in the world, one of the two guys in this match could be forgiven for sticking his hand in the air and saying, "Hey, fellas, what about me?" Daniel Bryan, the world heavyweight champion.
God,
good.
It's to the point where I'll probably get pissed if he loses here.
Yeah.
Because he just doesn't deserve. He's just so. I'm sorry. I don't care what they look for.
Right.
If you're sane and trying to run a decent wrestling promotion, Daniel Bryan is so much better than Sheamus.
Well, the good thing
and I'm not talking about just because he does moves better, he came from he's just a better character. Like, he's coming into his own, too. It seems like the promotion... Here's what pisses me off, okay? They bring a talented guy in. They don't like him.
Right.
Okay? Then they give him kind of a role that, they kind of let him toil around. Then they give him their role. He does well with it, and then they beat him.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. The other thing is, too, we talked about this with WrestleMania 11, how it is very iffy when you have the large babyface in there with the small heel and trying to get enough heat. Now, Daniel Bryan, unlike Shawn Michaels, Daniel Bryan is being pushed as kind of a submission machine. He can get stuff on you out of nowhere. And Daniel Bryan, I'm sure, is going to be on offense a lot more than Shawn Michaels was in that match. But there is going to be that kind of a dynamic. Plus, Sheamus has gotten most of the heat in the feud. I mean, run into the ring, put a slam or a kick or something like that on Daniel Bryan, leave. I almost think they're building to the same thing here. If the underestimated Daniel Bryan comes through again, I really hope you're right about that. He needs this. And supposedly, insiders are saying these days, I guess Vince's opinion, if you read the dirt sheets, is improving on Daniel Bryan.
Yeah. So that's always good news. But I think both champions need to retain.
I do, too. That would be one of the only times, I think, if that happened.
Yeah.
The match where it's going to be a title change based on all of the heat. I don't even remember how this stupid feud started. Cody Rhodes, the Intercontinental Champion, against the Big Show.
I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't care that it makes no sense. Cody Rhodes should go over.
Yeah, but that's the problem. He won't, and it's a thing where Cody Rhodes has had, I think, a very good run as Intercontinental Champion. He needs to lose it to somebody where it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, the Big Show.
Elevating the Big Show one more time?
The Big Show's done, man. I don't know why he's employed.
I mean,
I'm sorry. I know he's big,
right?
But man, he's been just mired in mediocrity for so long.
Right.
He's not a special. The specialness is worn off.
Right.
I don't care about when I see the Big Show. I'm kind of like, God, you're still around.
Yeah.
You know,
you're a guy who said that about Kane also, and he's still around.
Yeah, he's worse.
Before we go to the control of both shows match and just touch on that briefly, we'll touch on even more briefly the designated celebrity for this year, which, again, assuming that The Rock isn't filling that role in the main event as a movie star instead of a wrestler, Maria Menounos is in there with Kelly Kelly against Beth Phoenix and Eve Torres. Say this anyways. Maria is somebody that is a big fan, that respects the business like Snooki. I expect her to give a good effort like last year. Could really be an exposing the business kind of a thing. And Beth Phoenix and Eve Torres right now are both two very good heels who heels don't win matches like this.
Yeah, at least it's going to be short. Yeah, obviously the celebrity will win,
yeah.
I assume. So.
And that's not real good because Eve Torres is just starting to get heat as a heel at this point.
Yeah, they'll
Beth Phoenix is the women's champ.
Yeah, have Kelly beat Beth to set up an incredible.
At least
rematch.
that, yeah. I mean, Kelly is as awful a worker she is as awful a worker as she is as hot a woman, in which this late at night, did I bungle that?
Yeah, no,
all right, but anyways,
you made sense.
It still makes more sense for her to go over. All right, and then the last match ever in the anthology for us to talk about, of the ones that haven't happened yet here on WrestleMania 28, is Team Teddy versus Team Johnny. As of present, I believe it's Santino Marella, the team captain, with R-Truth, Kofi Kingston, two jobbers of the stars right there, Zack Ryder and Great Khali against Team Johnny. David Otunga, the captain, with Mark Henry, Christian, Jack Swagger, Dolph Ziggler, and still to be announced.
I hate this. I've hated every step of this awful feud. It takes away from matches on the show. I don't care who wins. It should just be John Lauren. I would just rather Vince McMahon just say, Teddy Long, you're gone. Like, no one would care.
Like, you got to have, like, a multi-man schmaz on there.
Why not just do Money in the Bank?
Yeah, I would agree with that. But they still want to do it as a separate pay-per-view later in the year, and they're already beating it into the ground. But maybe the compromise could be Money in the Bank, but the one you do later in the year has only got one briefcase. Maybe that's how you do it. Two briefcases, two Money in the Bank shows on a card is excessive. But
I agree.
So this is what we got for this year. So
Rock Cena, who's Cena's going to win?
It's got to be. It's got to be because
does he win as a babyface?
He wins as a quote-unquote babyface, same as he beat Triple H at WrestleMania 22.
They just pretend everyone loves him?
They'll zoom in on the 100 fans at Sun Life Stadium.
I just, that's so bizarre, the way they treat it.
And, for all the Cena sucks chants, they'll be piping in on the stadium speakers, "Let's go Cena," to try to balance it out and try to make it look like it's a 50-50 crowd here tonight, folks.
They've done a pretty good job in this feud. I'll say Cena's come across well.
Such that I've even asked you off air if you thought The Rock was deliberately dogging it to allow Cena to catch up. You didn't think so.
I think they're actually it's the promotions trying every backhanded trick they can.
Well, it's working because, again, while it's not going to be anywhere near a 50-50 crowd, they're doing a better job of getting it to be palatable, having Cena go over, which is going to be the case. My expectation, again, your favorite one of this era in the 9th mini episode that we've done here
26.
Is 26. Mine's 24. Do you think this
24 would be the second best.
Okay. Do you think this card has a decent chance to be mentioned in the same breath with those two? Is that your expectation? Because honestly, that's how I go into it these years. I go into it like they've got a template for real success here. The work rate should be very good in most, if not all, matches. If they don't reach that standard, I'm disappointed, and that's how I look at it.
The thing is, it's been very the ones we've talked about on this one have been very consistent for the most part. Last year was a noticeable step down, 25, except for the Great Michaels Undertaker match was a noticeable step down.
So 2 of the last 3 have not been good.
They've been subpar, to say the least. And the one in between I thought was very good. I would say that if it's not at the level of a 23, 24, 26, that's disappointment.
Right.
It should definitely be better than 25 and 27.
Right.
Without question. I mean, if it's not noticeably better than that, that's a colossal failure.
Right.
A lot of it is going to depend on the booking.
Yep, and we'll see how it goes. And it's a real experiment on their part. They've never done this before. They've never set it up a full year in advance. Cena on Rock
publicly announced.
Publicly announced.
I would say, I mean, they've had matches on the books for a year, but they haven't announced it.
Exactly, and the theme songs for this year apparently good feeling by Flo Rida, Wild Ones by Flo Rida, and Cleveland's own Machine Gun Kelly featuring Esther Dean with Invincible. Your thoughts, Kyle Ross?
I remember that 2 weeks ago that Machine Gun Kelly was there.
Yeah.
And somebody, it was a Todd Martin, was like, Michael Cole says Machine Gun Kelly is named that way for his rapid lyrical flow. He says this in a way that only Michael Cole could. And he wasn't being complimentary. So, I liked that.
The only thing that could be better is Vince McMahon trying to sound cool by saying that. Yeah. All right, so we've reached
he did try to teach Oscar how to rap once, reportedly.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That would be very interesting. All I can say is my hope is that the next time that a WrestleMania features a Cleveland area hip hop artist, that it's our good friend and associate Don Peterson.
Did that happen in a match?
What better way to leave it on than that?
Wow, this has been fun.
This has been.
I'm a little bushed right now.
I am.
I'm gassed.
We have reached the finish line here.
Up.
We've compared this to Ken Burns and the history of baseball here. Your 9-part anthology, the history of WrestleMania. This will stand up beside Ken Burns or any work of history here, my friend. It has been a pleasure doing it with you. Very pleased to have the FDH Lounge as the venue for this. Thank you very much, my friend.
It would be an honor.
All right. Thank you, my friend.